research on graffiti writing, street art, and muralism, promoted by INWORD and INDAGUE. So after talking about the Italian and Spanish points of view on urban creativity in relation to architecture, chemistry, urban policies, and technological aspects, today 4 experts coming from prestigious universities are invited to discuss some of these points touched upon during the previous meetings, recounting their experience. With me today also Monica Mongelli, Jordi Pallares, and Isabel Carrasco, who will interact with the researchers. And in this regard, the public is invited to write their observations in the chat, which will be read at the end of each presentation. So I pass the floor to Jordi.
Grazie Silvia.
Prego.
Benvenute, benvenuti, bienvenidos, bienvenidas a todos. Welcome. Yo os voy a hablar muy brevemente de los 2 encuentros que hemos hecho hasta ahora. El del día 2, que es el grupo que presentó INWORD, y el del día 9, que es el grupo, los ponentes que presentamos desde INDAGUE. El día 2 nos fuimos con Andrea Maglio, que viene de la Universidad de Nápoli, con una presentación titulada El rol de la arquitectura en el arte público, en la que empezó, creando vínculos entre la arquitectura, diálogos, contradicciones, etcétera, etcétera, y el muralismo y el street art, poniendo como ejemplos casos locales de Nápoles y haciendo como una serie de tipologías específicas respecto a eso, en esa dicotomía indisociable, a pesar de todo, entre lo que es el muralismo o el arte, el street art a grande escala con la arquitectura. Luego continuó Damiano Razzoli, desde la Universidad de Modena y Reggio Emilia, que estableció una serie de nexos entre el graffiti y la street art con las redes sociales, vinculando también contenidos y una serie de conceptos que versan, que se contaminan constantemente entre lo que es la pantalla y el muro, y todos esos saltos que van de un lado a otro, y cómo la geolocalización se establecía ya, digamos, en la parte presencial del espacio público, y luego se extrapola también a la pantalla. Y luego el mismo día con Dominique Scalarone, de la Universidad de Torino, en el que se habló muy específicamente el título era Promover el conocimiento de las técnicas artísticas y los materiales para desarrollar estrategias sostenibles para preservar el street art. Su ponencia puso muy sobre la mesa el interés y la necesidad de preservar o de conservar lo que hay en el espacio público a través, pues, de nuevos materiales y nuevas técnicas que vienen del campo de la restauración. En el día 9 empezamos con Queco Martínez, desde la Universidad de Málaga, con un discurso que estaba vinculado a su tesis recién publicada, sobre cómo el espacio público de Málaga, también es un caso local, se ha venido manipulando y gestionando desde lo privado, cómo la exposición pública y el beneficio privado han ido de la mano respecto a lo que es la especulación, obviamente la gentrificación, con toda una serie de casos especiales muy examinados sucintamente en toda una serie de años en que estuvo gestionado por la parte del Partido Popular, el Partido Español vinculado a la derecha. Desde una perspectiva siempre como muy crítica. Luego siguió Jaume Gómez, también desde la Universidad Politécnica de Valencia, que habló desde lo que se puede denominar el graffiti rural, que es una clasificación, muy particular y que viene a ser un poco o viene a hablar de esa necesidad de irse de la ciudad y de irse también más allá de la periferia, buscando otros lugares, en esos no lugares, en esa parte más vinculada quizá a un terreno más rural o más vinculado a la naturaleza, donde los escritores y artistas urbanos no buscan tanto ser visibilizados, sino trabajar de un modo más endogámico, retomando quizá eso que se ha perdido mucho desde de lo que son las prácticas artísticas urbanas, con toda también una serie de tipologías muy específicas que él estableció. Y ya para finalizar, Santiago Morilla, desde la Universidad Complutense de Madrid, nos habló de, bueno, ya desde la esfera pública, más allá del espacio público, de cómo las nuevas tecnologías llevan ya un tiempo influenciando lo que está trabajando en el espacio público y sobre todo habló de nuevos públicos y nuevos agentes no humanos y posthumanos en lo que es la intervención de ese terreno presencial y virtual en el que nos encontramos ahora, donde el hombre deja de estar en el centro y donde se miran también esos micropaisajes tan presentes, tan importantes, porque ayudan a construir también muchísimo lo que está ocurriendo y desplazan al ser humano a otro lugar quizá mucho más horizontal, vinculado con lo híbrido y lo poslocativo. Y nada, sin más, os dejo, continúo con Mónica. Gracias a todos.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks, Jordi. So we will start with the first presenter. Today, finally, we have our international speakers who will give us an external point of view on what we said together in the first two meetings. So I will start with Oscar Molina Palestina, graduate in graphic design, master's and PhD in art history from the National Autonomous Graduate University of Mexico. And since 2017, he is a full professor in the Department of Art at the Center for Education for Foreigners at UNAM. And his lines of research cover three different topics: iconograph studies on works of art, analysis of the transformations of Mexico City, and development of pedagogical strategies for teaching Mexican art and culture to foreigners. So he's going to talk in Spanish, and eventually I will ask some of you, Isabel and Jordi, to help us for some translation if it is needed. So I will start asking and stimulating your presentation, starting from two specific questions. So on the basis of what you apprehend from the first two meetings, what happened today in the public spaces? And is it possible to make a comparison between Italy and Spain? Thank you.
Okay, Monica, thanks for the presentation. I prepare and speak in English, so I try to, can you tell me if you see my presentation? It's
Yes,
okay?
we see it.
Okay. Okay, first of all, I want to say thank you for the invitation from INWAR and INDAGUE to participate in this interchange of urban creativity. English and me are not friends, so I prepare these meditations. I write in English my presentation, so you can check also the text and my speech. And after that, we can dialogue about this presentation. So I put off my video and I speak. Street art on the streets, and therefore urban art in all its manifestations, graffiti, stickers, muralism, even commercial advertising, is one of the contemporary artistic activities that emerged on a global scale from civil society through what we call counterculture or popular art, understood as art of the population, not like the style the 16th century, and which has subsequently moved towards institutionalization either through public or private organizations. It is a vital movement which finds itself and reinterprets itself, sometimes ignoring past experiences and rewriting its own ones. The phenomenon is linked to the construction and habitability of large cities. Cities built in different periods, but which clear large surfaces correspond to the aesthetics to the 20th century. These are cities that emerged with a functionalist sense, with a plasticity of white blind walls, as Adolf Loos imagined in Ornament and Crime in 1908, pointing out that the streets of the cities will shine like white walls. Back in 1908, a man who defaced the walls was a criminal or a degenerate, while a tattooed person was primitive or a delinquent. Now, 100 years later, our society tattoos the skin of those cities built on their white walls aesthetics that are no longer in contemporary taste. The initiative of Inward and INDAGUE to talk about the exchanges on urban creativity in Italy and Spain highlights the common points that this global art has in Europe, while distinguish the particularities that this artistic manifestation possesses in each country. Having been invited to participate as a narrator of the experiences presented, I cannot make my reflections without first talking a little about the Mexican experience, which has a particular history. In my country, a 20th century artistic movement known as Mexican muralism began to enrich the walls of cities as early as the 1980s. I will briefly explain how this phenomenon developed in Mexico City to later compare the talks of our colleagues from Italy and Spain, finding points of agreement and particularities of each region. The Mexican muralism movement emerged in the 1920s in interiors, inspired by the religious art imported by the Spaniards, also by the pre-Hispanic mural art that was being rediscovered in those years, and even looked towards the Italian Renaissance as a fundamental movement of art in the walls. However, other more contemporary influences were also present, such as the painting in shops, known as rótulos, and especially in the painting of pulquerias, where the business was advertised with colorful paintings with various topics. The sign of the walls announcing businesses with words and images is a popular manifestation that continues of these days, although adopting the aesthetics of the new urban art. The intention of this first muralist movement were several. Beyond its artistic sense, it has a pedagogical use as a tool for the construction of a national identity. It was a propaganda movement that very soon became political discourse. The three most famous artists in this movement, José Clemente Orozco, Diego Rivera, and David Alfaro Siqueiros, were invited to paint walls in the United States around the 1930s. Particularly, the last two were aware that the new cities would require diverse languages in which the white walls on the exteriors were a great opportunity for a new urban and public art in which the forms and material could not remain the same to those used indoors. When this aesthetic of the city reached Mexico at the end of the 40s, proposals were formulated, giving rise to a movement that in Mexican art has been called plastic integration, integración plástica, in which the exterior walls of public buildings were painted with various techniques, the most famous being those of the central campus of the National Autonomous University of Mexico from 1952. But also works in housing units are work nothing just as in the Juarez complex with a work by Guatemaltecan Carlos Mérida from 1948, or in public buildings such as Torre Banobras from 1964. In this sense, a city with painting walls is not strange to Mexico, although the aesthetic sense where it emerged from is still a little distance from what contemporary public art represents. A more popular urban art originated in a counterculture movement linked in the 80s, where Mexican experiences are joined by graffiti imported from Anglo-Saxon countries, painting walls illegally, combined with popular muralism movements that emerged in neighborhoods such as Tepito, in which artists from the Tepito Arte Acá movement painted walls in that area with historical topics, but also with contemporary realities where the workers' trades were presented on the facades of their homes, dignifying their spaces with murals, a decoration reserved for middle and upper class neighborhoods, long before the concept of gentrification was discussed. These diverse realities reached the 21st century and are now mixed with public art and global new muralism, where new aesthetics and questions arise in parallel to different Western countries. Such is the case of the Italians Andrea Maglio, Damiano Razzoli, and Dominique Scalarone, together with the Spaniards Queco Martinez, Jaume Gomez, and Santiago Morilla, spoke to us in the preceding weeks, and to which I will refer, making a mix of topics, peppering with some Mexican examples. The first topic I wish to refer to is the one presented by Andrea Maglio, the role of architecture in public art, on how architecture in its different manifestations, either as sculpture, architecture, and public spaces, or as surfaces or for different themed murals, serve both to dignify neighborhoods, give them an identity, and influence the public taste of the cities. Finally, public art in any of its forms has the responsibility, since it will participate in the building a collective taste in which cultural memories are generated and nourished. In this case, I want to discuss about this example that Andrea presented 2 weeks ago. These pictures are taken in 2007, so 15 years ago. And we can see in first place the sculpture in the public space, but also the graffiti that is critical about this public art, considering pollution, capitalist pollution, or decision rich people that they decide what kind of things we can put on the public space. Okay, we continue. In this sense, when Andrea states that architecture is not just a surface, he opens the debate that Queco Martinez also addressed on libidinal cultural politics. We're talking the city of Malaga as a case study. He tells us how it is that in underground movement, this urban art has been co-opted by commercial brands and institutions, and how they make use of the city walls to generate gentrifying discourses, taking advantage of an artistic movement to promote products and brands, in addition to generating works for tourist purposes. In this regard, the Mexican artist David Alfaro Siqueiros already mentioned in the middle of the 20th century that urban arts would have to learn from the experience of advertising art, since it was the one that had faced the reality of those modern cities with white walls. However, they could not be appreciated in the same way as in closed space. They faced changing lighting, new traffic speeds, and a decreasing reception capacity. Both Queco and Andrea reflected on other values that can be taken advantage of by contemporary street art, and that perhaps in their immediacy are not being exploited. Discourses that can go beyond the picturesque that many of these works approach. I would like to bring up an example of a Mexican piece that was created in the 21, was part of a government program in public spaces on expressway overpasses in Mexico City, for which several artists were invited. Many of them formed in graffiti. The theme is the Day of the Dead. The artistic captured on a large surface an image that represents a schoolman with a woman sailing on the lake where the ancient city originated. A dog accompanies them, while in the background you can see a city landscape and lit candles. The theme has many layers in its conception and takes various references from Mexican culture, both ancient and contemporary. However, the wall on which it is located and its function as a part of a high-speed circulation space are not the most convenient for its appreciation, making us wonder who these works are made for and with what intention. This leads me to the presentation of Jaume Gomez, who told us about rural graffiti in some regions of Spain. The works shown by Gomez raise several questions. One of them discussed in last week's talk. It is influence on the rural landscape with very peripheral examples of the city or on communication infrastructure such as bridges. Who are these pieces addressed to? What is its intention and influence on the landscape? The shapes shown, whether classic bombs and label or geometric figures, make the presence of the infrastructures more noticeable, but it doesn't not seem that they have emerged with that intention. On the other hand, its creators seems to have training in contemporary artistic discourses, contrasting with other more spontaneous expression in this type of space. In that sense, I would like to bring up a record of some walls that I found in 2015 in an abandoned rural house. This place, located in the state of Sonora on the way to the border with the United States, must have been a refuge for immigrants. The images reflect various themes, both Mexican and American, where the question also arises: to whom are these works directed? To future visitors seeking refuge? Or they arise as the self-satisfaction of an expressive need on the part of their creators, whether they are artists or not, who fulfill a precise purpose without caring about the reflections of the future destiny of two pieces, which led me to the last topic of reflection to talk presented by Italian and Spanish colleagues, the preservation of that art that in its origin contains the germ of the ephemeral. Probably the painting from the house in Sonora no longer exists or have been altered, receiving other images without anyone having cared. Even the wall that I showed you, dedicated to the Day of the Dead, begins to be damaged by the rains, the action of the sun, and the smoke from the vehicles that continually pass in the place. What to do with these works that seem destined to disappear, but that are sometimes worth preserving? Dominique Scalarone, from her discipline, present us with the different challenges faced to preserve urban mural art, from the selection of which works are worth restoring to the different methods used to recover color and conservation of the forms, which will continue to be demolished by the inclemencies of the outside. One of the criteria for the selection of these works is the critical fortune of the artists, as exemplified by hiring pieces to Tomondo, located in Pisa, made in 1989. Again, I bring another Mexican example, this time by David Alfaro Siqueiros, with a work produced 70 years ago in the University City. That has been the subject of multiple restorations that continues to face the outside. I could tell you that in this sense, we Mexicans come from the future. Preserving these works is a complex, expensive, and task, and not everything can be preserved. These artistic manifestations have also posed technical challenges in which material creators are experimenting with more durable formulas. This is another example in Brazil, Rio de Janeiro. Is a artwork of Cobra, Cobra painting 1 kilometer of walls with faces of different people in for the Olympic Games in Rio de Janeiro in 2016. And the other photography that you can see in the right is a picture that I take 2 months ago. You can see that the picture is disappeared, and it's a very important work, but this work disappear in the near future. Okay, a more contemporary way of preserving the memory of this new art is the use of digital technologies. In this case, Ramiano Razzoli presented us with various platforms with which this cultural phenomenon has been recorded. Surely, this work will become more specialized and will allow us with the use of artificial intelligence to carry out other types of research, and will be based on the record that is made of this art, both by the artists themselves and by the researchers interested in them. The dialogue between urban art and digital technology is rich in possibilities. The exchange manifests itself in various ways. Santiago Morilla shows us examples of how this synergy between the real and the digital world can be found in urban art, extracting visual languages that are already a part of our daily lives, in which we live for many hours in the digital world, but we have not yet abandoned our wanderings through the cities. These are some brush strokes or rather spray shots of these exchanges on urban creativity organized by INWARD and INDAGUE, which we hope will continue. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you so much, Oscar. Thank you for your comprehensive scientific contribution. It really touched on all the points it covered in the previous meeting and gave dignity and value to all the previous presentations. So we found points of contact that were then adapted to the specific case of Mexico. So really fantastic. Thank you. And I would ask if there's some question from the audience. But I saw before that was a question in the chat, so I'm gonna read it. So thanks, Oscar from Ilaria. In your opinion, what are the things about historical Mexican muralism that survive in Mexico today?
Okay. I think that the majority of the things that was present in the original murals in the 20th century is present in this moment because we have a government intervention, because government pay some walls for artists to paint. So we have a public administration also but maybe one of the changes or one of the differences between past and present is the material. For example, in past, they used a fresco, a mosaic to create their artworks because that artist wanted to preserve their works. In this moment, people use spray, use acrylic painting, and their works are not durable. Okay.
Thank you so much. And there's also another comment for you. Grande Oscar, gracias.
Gracias, Jaume. Jaume or Jaume, the pronunciation? Okay, well,
Sorry, maybe I didn't understand.
No, I asked to Jaume. I don't know if his name is Jaume or Jaume. Jaume. Okay.
Jaume, sí.
Okay.
Okay, so I will pass to the second presenter, Pedro Suarez Neves. So he's multidisciplinary and postgraduate academy training in design and architecture, and in Lisbon University scholar, both in Barcelona and Rome, specialized in participatory methodologies and informal visual science in public spaces, for example, graffiti and street art. Co-creator and professor of non-commissioned public art workshop and scholar in science and technology management in Faculty of Fine Arts, University of Lisbon, founder of the IP2 Portuguese chapter of IAP2 International Association for Public Participation and of the Lisbon Urban Creativity Conference, and editor of the Urban Creativity Scientific Journals, among the other publication, urbancreativity.org. So even for you, Pedro, I will start from these two questions. So on the basis of what you apprehend from the first two meetings, what happened today in the public spaces? And is it possible to make a comparison between Italy and Spain? Thank you.
Okay, I thank you. And I'm very happy to be here. And I'm sorry I'm not having any images or presentation, but my participation will be based on my talk, and I hope it will work. Okay, I will talk very slowly, and hopefully if something it's not comprehensive, or if you want to say something, just raise your hand and I will follow. I did receive the questions, and I did made some notes regarding the questions, but also other notes regarding the organization of this event. So I will start to reply the questions you made, and I think somehow I think it's reductive to create generalizations from the previous presentations, both from the Italian and the Spanish side, because they are just a short number of presentations, and they depended a lot from the character that each group, each association wanted to give to the selection of the people that were available to talk. So it's not like that we can do a generalization from these contents that were shared. But saying this, it's easy to understand that everyone placed the topic of this joint venture on his right place. So everyone placed graffiti writing, street art, and new muralism in relation with the interdisciplinary ambit. Let's say everyone looked at these phenomenons, graffiti, writing, street art, new muralism, on this disciplinary logic, you know, interdisciplinary, but mostly, and I'm more concerned about the disciplinary aspect of these terms, of these designations. And I will develop a little bit more about this further on the conversation. I guess that the tendency, again, resulting from the selection of the organizers, the curatorial aspects of who and why selected those speakers, and also the speakers themselves, why they selected to talk about these themes and so on. Looking at this panorama that the Inward and INDAGUE invited and were like curators of, I can say that from the side of the Italian presenters, there were more presentations inclined to the hard sciences. So we had more, let's say, people from the areas of chemistry, less vague areas, let's say. And the Spanish, they were more towards the humanistic. So we had mostly other aspects that are more connected with the humanistics areas. So the tendency from the presentations from the two previous sessions, what I can observe was this tendency. And I think, I don't know if it's something that came from the authors, if it's on purpose from the organizers, but I felt this a bit on this direction. So Italy, art sciences, Spain, humanistics. Well, but I think, and this is a very good and interesting aspect, as I can see also in the conference that I organize and the publications and so on, that this openness, it's good because it opens the spectrum of collaborations, you know, so it's always like complementary dimensions of interest and of dialogue. Another specific thing, it's that in general, all presenters proved an incredible high quality and mature approaches to the field today. And I think you can find this comment a bit strange, but I think this is new in a certain sense, because during the past decade, I'm organizing this conference for 1 decade and the publications and so on. Much of the conversation was about stabilization of concepts. That is something it's still going on. Okay, we still have, of course, the need to and very important need to stabilize the concepts. What is graffiti? What is street art? Where are the limits? It's art, it's vandalism, so on. But much more aspects are in dialogue today, and that is good. So I think during this decade, the space that almost entirely was occupied by the definition of concepts, nowadays it's condivided with many other aspects of this disciplinary area. And this is very good also. It's not like only keeping itself on the definition of what are the concepts, but it's also evolving to other aspects. And the presentations here in this event were a proof of that. The subjects of study were of characteristics that were presented, that were artistic, cultural, architectonic, digital, chemical, political, and poetic, among many others. So all these aspects were present in the previous presentations, and this shows the eclectic aspects of contact from this specific area of graffiti writing, street art, and new muralism contact with. So it's kind of very, very interesting and meaningful. And mostly having all this in mind, and actually I wrote the reply to these questions not so long ago, and some more days ago I had actually prepared other topics that touch these topics to talk to you. So, like in a nutshell, I did a really very small research about on my email account about the first emails I exchanged with Inward and INDAGUE. And I love to do this kind of search on my email account. So the first email I've exchanged with Inward was in 2011, so 13 years ago. And the first email I've exchanged with INDAGUE was in 2017, 7 years ago. So this doesn't mean, of course, that I do not have longer relations with people from both groups or whatever, but I think it's meaningful just to see how for how long these structures exist, how persistent they are, and it's very good and pleasant to be here and sharing this history of so many years already with you both. Of course, there are people like me that have a relation with this phenomenon that go way back, both as actors and researchers, and myself also engaged with the subject, as many of you know, maybe with awareness of it, like since 91, something like this. And I was 14 years old, so it was a long time ago. So this is, I think it's really relevant to have this frame of reference regarding the contact with the phenomenon. Also, bringing the narrative to the present moment, I have here a little bit of dialogue that goes more in the direction of the relational aspects of this phenomenon and not so much of the personal. I will not evolve much more the personal aspect here, but I work a lot with the need of expression and creation, assembling my personal backgrounds. So I assemble the drawing, the street life, the design, and the architecture, and I try to do a mix on these subjects, and of course also to push it to the academic world. And here becomes the relational aspect of my conversation. That is actually what we are doing here. We are doing this relational aspect of the conversation, let's say, and what have been done in the previous days, the previous sessions. So the relational challenge, in my perspective, it's on the reply to the question, what can we do collectively? So myself, with this history that I've already shared with you, the two structures, Inward, INDAGUE, and what can we do with this relational? I think it's a challenge that we have to do something out of it. And you are doing very fine, and we are in contact, all the structures, but I have this urge to understand what can we do more, what can we move forward more, and I think so I think this is the venue, the proper venue to attract your attention, and on this last moment of my conversation with you, to dedicate this talk to this. So what can we do more from our structures point of view? Okay, from inward, INDAGUE, and myself, urban creativity, how can we do more? And I've reached here at least 2 or 3 points. And the first point is to always present the challenge of framing the phenomenons that we are dealing with. So it's always challenging to frame them. Okay, so they are volatile, and they multiply a lot in different research directions. So these phenomena are not easy to grasp. Personally, I'm embracing this as something positive, and I'm multiplying my journals. So and I'm trying to go in multiple directions, trying to catch all the the things I can see that are in contact with this. But I think I guess we all are on this, trying to expand a bit and try to understand how this fits other directions that are of our comfort, of our interest, of our range of action, or we just can feel that they'll be meaningful for the development of this field. So this is the first thing. It's the framing aspect. It's something that we can do, like frame this thing. There's another thing that is there's always a tension / opportunity. So it's a problem opportunity thing, tension opportunity, between the openness and the crystallized meanings that change from geography, age group, or individual. And many times this is our source of research and act and stage where we can act upon as researchers and authors. So these ideas that are getting crystallized in society, like what's the meaning of graffiti, or what's the meaning of street art. So these things that come from outside, that come from the public sphere, or from the common knowledge about the common meaning about these words, they are both a challenge and a menace. It's a tension between the things that we fight for to being recognized on the word graffiti and street art, and the things that the common person attached to this, and this changes a lot from geography, group, age. It's very complex, and I think it's challenging also, this aspect. So I think it's related with the framing also, but I think it's also an opportunity, and I would like to emphasize the opportunity aspect of it. So the opportunity to explain better what in fact it's different and it's the same. One aspect, and I think this is particularly concerns our 3 organizations that are academically oriented, and this is within the spectrum of graffiti, street art, new muralism. Between this spectrum, I think our 3 organizations are aligned in one specific thing, that already a niche, that is the relation from all this phenomenon with the academic context. And this is very particular. So if we are, it's like if street art and graffiti, it's a niche somehow within the arts, we are like putting in contact a niche of research within the research field. So we are a niche of a niche of a niche, so it's something that's very particular. But we are at least in European terms, there are more associations and so on, of course, but that are working towards the academic aspects of the relation between street art, graffiti, and so on. There are not so many, and we are meaningful on this direction. So from what I know, and personally I have done it, There are some optional disciplines, summer courses that have been created for some time, some scattered through faculties, sometimes with success, but other times not. And these initiatives, these summer courses, these small initiatives from individual researchers, professors that try to do something happening within the faculty structures, they should rely on some collective effort from our three structures to be supported somehow. So because we gather this knowledge of how to help them in giving them credibility, giving them tools in a way that they can approach faculties and universities so they can have their summer course done, their optative discipline, their, you know. So my idea here behind all this is to say that I think we are in conditions to support people that go into the contact with the faculties and try to generate a disciplinary area for what we are talking. So and maybe this is a way we can gather disciplinary efforts, grow from optative to mandatory disciplines in some courses that I don't know if they exist. I know that there are some optional, sorry, that I need to close the windows, it's raining. I know that we have some optional courses going on, summer courses and so on, but I do not know if there are some mandatory disciplines going on that are in contact with these areas of street art, graffiti and so on. But I think maybe sometime there will be. And who knows, someday there even can be a degree on the subject of the phenomenon that we study. You know, so the idea is to generate a construction that comes from here and goes on that direction. Because if we not do this, nobody will do for us. You know, I think it's something that we need to gather our efforts around. Otherwise, this will be always something optional, accessory to the, I don't know, the visual landscape, urban something that's parallel, and it comes from some sculpture course or some visual design course or something, you know. So I think we need to gather some forces in a way to help people to build this disciplinary logic. But I'm not. I propose that we align ourselves, of course, and start this construction of support documentation. Simple documents such as roadmaps, guidelines, how-to booklets, maybe the emission of recognition letters, and all these can be simple to produce in our languages and in English. I personally mobilize myself for the task, and I will contact you with a line of action for that purpose. This is what I had in mind and what I written, and I hope that the rain is not making too much noise. So, okay.
Thank you, Pedro. Thank you so much for your presentation and for your contribution. I think that, do you hear me?
I can hear you, but it's okay. Very rainy.
Okay, so I think that your participation in this conference was necessary and crucial because you were able to analyze, as a trailblazer researcher on the topic, how the scientific and academic approach on the topic has changed, and also how the interest in investigating specific themes on urban creativity has grown over time in light of the journal's various calls and your conference, etc. And I would also say, of course, that this initiative was just a starting point to broaden the debate on a geographical scale, proposing a comparison between specific cases in both countries. But certainly it's just a frame of the seminar, and cannot be comprehensive of all the total phenomenon. Since in nowadays a worldwide phenomenon, we can definitely develop more ample analysis. And okay, sorry. I would also, if you hadn't nothing to add to this consideration, I would. Okay, I would read the question in the chat. So we have Yvonne. Hi Pedro, since you have been involved in urban creativity for a long time and you attend many conferences and even organize a well-known conference in the field, what do you think is missing at European level? A more solid network or perhaps a regulation?
Maybe I will reply question by question, right? I think it's the best. I think it's the more, I think we need more cooperation. Of course, the problem is that because the professional side of what we can do here, it's very residual. So that's why it's so volatile and so on. So the problem is that we are on the threshold of something to change actually, but I think that something only will change if we align, if we talk, if we try to make some efforts collectively, and try to, mostly on the area of the relations with the faculties and universities, try to generate some louder, more recognizable voice in order to support those who are trying to be more sustained working on these research areas and so on. So I think it's more the first one, the collaborative aspect. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And we'll pass also, there's another consideration maybe by Isabel. Isabel, would you like to read it yourself?
Well, I was just adding to what Pedro was saying, that for me, after so many years, I was able to finally teach a semester on graffiti and street art, very introductory. And obviously the institutions like, or associations like INWORD, all the work by urban creativity, being backed by INDAGUE, I think everything helped, as you said, you know, for the credibility of the project, you know, because you need to convince institutions about that there is actually an academic corpus here that is worthy to study and that it's rigorous and serious, and despite the appearance of the subject. So I guess little by little. So what I don't understand though is that according to your last comment, what you think in Europe we are lacking is institutional support, or that we link our work with universities in a more strong way?
I think yes, I think we have at least the Portuguese, I don't know, maybe some Italian, some Spanish, of course. I think they are the faculties and universities that are quite conservative, and they look at this subject with very strange look and so on. I think the pressure to do something academically, it's because the social impact, it's already very big, and it's like, you know, they suspect that can be gathering some audiences, that can be gathering some students, and that's what the faculties and universities want. They want students, they want, you know, they live from the fact that they have enrollments. So I think the universities themselves, they are in a shifting point of more conservatory to less conservatory, but they are still very conservatory, at least in Europe. And we can give them this more less old-fashioned look, you know, having courses touching these points and so on. I think we can help them, and I think we can give this fresh air of observation to the subjects. And but it's challenging. I think we are always in this position, at least in the Southern Europe universities. They are quite, you know, conservative, and it's very difficult to do something at this level. I don't know, maybe more for the North, the Dutch and the German, and I don't know, these guys, maybe they will be more open. And actually there are different kinds of research going on. They're touching these fields, but certainly things are moving, and I think we need to gather all together to make it correctly somehow. But I still feel that it's too dispersed. You know, it's something that's very everyone is doing the things by themselves, very not relying 100% on the network, you know. So, but in fact, the network doesn't exist like, you know, organized in a way that can give this support. And this is more or less the purpose of my conversation here, was to push this side of making the you know, Spanish, Italian, Portuguese structures to organize themselves in a way, collectively, in a way to give this support to anyone that comes and wants to you know, be supported in a way to do a summer course, a semester, wherever they can on the faculties. Yeah.
Thank you. I could keep talking, but we need to move forward, I think.
Okay, I think there's a request from Yvonne that she would like to have your email address. And also Jaume wrote, I think many universities has lost 3 decades don't talking about subcultures, alternative arts, and now on are crazy about big murals, IA proposals and tech issues. We lost some, but we're still working in research. So if you all agree, I will thank you again, Pedro. If you all agree, I will pass the floor to Isabel, to the other 2 presenters of today's meeting. Thank you.
Hello. So according to the schedule, our next speaker is Jonah. So Jonah Tolonen is a researcher artist who combines aesthetics, ethnographical, and action research practices through an inquiry into embodiments and environments. She studied graphic design and photography in Canberra, education and fine arts in Oulu, and received a PhD in art and design at the University of Lapland. She has been a visiting researcher in different universities and educational centers, such as the Universidad Complutense in Madrid, the Finnish Institute of Athens, and has participated in long-term artistic research projects such as Floating Peripheries and Activism on Edges. Well, her articles have been published in different journals, and she has also edited several books, including Figurations on Peripheries Through Arts and Visual Studies for Ratchet. So same question for you, Jonah. Based on the last 2 meetings, what is going on in public space today, and how do Italy and Spain compare, if that comparison is even possible or makes sense? The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Isabel. I try to share my screen. Does it go? Can you see me now?
Yes.
Great. So hello everyone, and I'm talking from Athens, Greece at the moment. I'm here doing my fieldwork for my current project that is actually funded by the Kone Foundation, and it's about artivism on edges. And I work as a postdoctoral researcher in that funded project, and my home university is University of Lapland, Rovaniemi, Finland. And I will shortly try to make some kind of summarization of the two meetings we've had before. And I do agree with Pedro about how difficult it is to make comparison, first of all, between two countries, because there were such a few talks, and also because the topics of the talks were very different. So I actually was trying to look all the presentations sort of wearing my own lenses, that the things that I find interesting in the presentations, and what kinds of sort of like maybe trends that are perhaps coming in future that I would see that are possible. And of course, I'm looking these issues from the Northern Europe, from the situation in Finland at the moment, but as you know, they are very sort of like global trends also. And I will have few examples from Finland that I found interesting, that also sort of are parallel to the things that the speakers were talking about. The first sort of trend I found in the talks that I sort of saw seeds of it, and also that what I find interesting was artivism. I'm actually working in this artivism theme at the moment, so it's very natural for me to sort of spot also things about this issue from the talks that people were giving. And as you probably already know, that artism is about art being a strategy for communication when it's mostly used by activists. I call also semi-artists that are not like working artists, or researchers like for myself. I'm part of this group. Or it can also be art as self-expression. So artivism can be sort of divided, in my opinion, in different groups concerning what's the background of the person who's doing it. And how it works in a sort of like a way that it's also always outside the official political system and participation. And what is interesting about it, I think the people who are doing artivism are always very aware of the current situation. Was it a political situation, ecological situation, whatever? And they are very educated people. And it's always, I find it as a political act. It reveals awareness about the system we're living in and how it's not working, and that the current system cannot be seen as a motor for change. For example, like eco-artivism is a good example of this. And why artivism is working in this, let's say, context, I think it's good and it's used to get the visibility to an issue that government does not seem important, or the government doesn't want to work on it, or they don't have any fundings on it, and so on and so on. Here is an example from Finland. This is actually just a few weeks back. Here's an eco groups from Finland and Norway that painted the Finnish Parliament House with red paint. And this was concerning the Finnish government's money going to the support fossil energy. So this was sort of like the issue they made. And this all was done in 5 minutes. In Finland, in front of the Parliament House, there's no guides or policemen. You can walk. I live very nearby, so you can actually walk on these stairs. So it was very easy for them to go to the Parliament House, and then they had paint, this natural red paint that was actually later on washed off. But they had like 5 to 8 minutes time to do this before their security came and then stopped them doing it. And here are the pictures right after they actually done it. And they had, of course, their own press person taking the pictures and taking the videos. And it was very quickly uploaded to the internet and Instagram and so on. So actually, I actually saw this before even it was in the Finnish news. So the examples from the speakers that was very sort of like what I thought was dealing with the artivism issues was, for example, this Damiano Razzoli, when he said that screens duplicate the visibility. Duplicate is probably, for example, in this example is not enough. It should be something like 100% more screens. It was all in everyone's hands, in everybody's Instagram and social media and so on. So these artivism groups are using, they know what they're doing, they know how to get the visibility and so on. Also, Andrea Maglio talked about the situation between architecture, symbolic places, and the intentions of the artists who are doing it. And in this case, when the people are doing artivism, it's very often getting the disapproval from the public, because it always generates more visibility. Not always is the attention from the groups, but for example, in this example, it was definitely getting the disapproval from the public. And what was very interesting about in this issue was, what I found was that the most loudest groups who disapproved this act, because it's a Finnish Parliament House, it's a protected building and so on, was actually the Finnish graffiti painters, who were first ones to say that you always need to know the rules, where to paint and when to paint. And for example, a Finnish old graffiti painter who is now working for the parliament was the one who said that this is not okay. You can never paint a symbolic building. Also, the one thing is not particularly in this case to provoke an aesthetic experience, but to provoke an experience to get to know and care and emphasize with otherness. So this issue, this painting the building really gave a lot of visibility, but also rose a large discussion about, for example, what the Finnish parliament is actually doing, and sort of getting to the issue itself, that more people actually started to know that Finnish parliament is actually giving money to support the fossil energy more than people actually knew. The second nature, which is actually related to this, is I find it, sorry, there's now people in the reception. I'm talking from the reception from the hotel. Yes, so the nature. So we all know that the pandemic increased the number of people wanting to spend more time in the nature and interest in plants, growing their own veggies, being perhaps more vegetarians or vegans. And the growing number of people got worried about the nature state and the climate warming. And now what's happening, I see, is that more restaurants, bars, even airports, new housing areas are actually, when they are planned and designed, they are designed with more green areas. What is now with the nature thing is also that people are using, there are a lot of like a trend now in Finland that people who are using washable nature-based colors, for example, when they are painting or doing works in public place. So the main thing is to be both only available or visible for a while, and also that you will be more careful about not putting more toxics in the nature, and you're not yourself breathing the fumes from the sprays and so on. And what I was actually thinking about when listening to the talks was that maybe we would need more collaboration also with the chemists and experts, how to bring more affordable colors, nature-based colors to the public and so on, to the people who are doing it. When we don't need urban art that needs to be more permanent. And also in those cases, I think, I'm not sure, I've never heard that people are actually considering making permanent colors that could be more maybe nature-based and so on. The thing with this is now is that when people are using the washable nature-based colors, there is no more this old-timer graffiti people's need to respect the old architecture nor the symbolic buildings, because, for example, in the example I showed before, the red paint was washed in just during the same day. So people can make more visibility with these nature-based colors if they want to the buildings that could be considered a symbolic architecture. Also, what's happening is that more of these ephemeral pieces are painted, either the pieces themselves are either not to be meant to stay a long time, but also that they are painted on surfaces that are not there forever. For example, ice, snow, and sand, so on. Here's an example of David Poppa, who is Finland-based, born in the United States, who is he himself calls himself a street artist, but he goes to very rural places. Here's an example, him painting with all natural, himself created paintings or colors that are water soluble. So he will be painting with colors that are not meant to stay for a long time, and he's painting on top of the ice in I think it was in the Finland, in somewhere in the seaside or something like that. So he makes the paintings. They are meant to be there just for a while. He, of course, makes a documentary, takes a lot of photos, videos, so on. But then, of course, when the weather changes, the painting is there no more, but yet he's not polluting the sea with chemicals or anything like that. And here on my last slide, I collect some of the examples that I thought were connected with this nature thing that I had in mind, like Dominique Scalore, she talked about estragias sostenibles. I think this should be sustainable in so many ways. It should be sustainable, that we really should think about more about how is the normal spray the best way to paint. If there should be a painting that could be that it's not permanent, and if there was a permanent color, could we be more nature friendly with them? And like Jaume said, like these, I was really enjoyed about this, his talk about these rural graffitiers going to the nature, yet then spraying with normal paint in the nature. And I was just thinking that, wow, why can't there be rural graffitiers who would paint something that wouldn't be permanent color. That would be actually something that would be more connected with the nature. Again, with that, it would be vanished in a couple of weeks or so. And Keiko was talking about this Malaga situation where he said something that hit me really hard is that adios graffitis, hola jardines, that like I told before, like in Finland, we've seen a lot of like airport walls painted with graffitis maybe 5 years ago, and now they're replaced with a wall of herbs, for example, where the people can eat from it and so on. So I'm just thinking also that if the boom of graffiti street art is also showing the sort of like marks that it's not going to be that popular because the nature is sort of taking over. So this was the one Keko's comments that I started to think that that's true, that graffitis are not that, or street art or urban art, definitely not something people think first now when they think how we should decorate this bar, for example. They think more about the nature. But that's all. Thank you all.
Thank you, Jonah. I find fascinating how after being in the same sessions, you all are arriving at so different conclusions. And you know, like after observing everything with different lens. I don't know if there is any questions, maybe later. I really liked how you we're separating the nature aspects and the activism aspects, and yeah, okay. So if there is no questions, we can pass to the last one, and then maybe we can have time to have a conversation. Before that, I need to apologize on behalf of Santiago, who wasn't able to make it today because he's working. I think Jaume is here, and Keiko has been in and out because he is actually in class. Okay, so if everyone agrees, we can pass to Anna. Our last expert. Let me introduce her for the audience. So Ana Garizo has a degree in Portuguese linguistics and literature from the University of Lisbon, and she also has a master in cultural management and programming. And she's actually finishing her PhD in communication science. And the PhD research focuses on the role of street art and graffiti writing, the role that they play in the creation of urban space, and plays together with the policies of regulations they permanently negotiate with. This research looks at the urban space as a communicative landscape and dives into the writing practices in public space to think about how they contribute to the creation of new images of the city and participate in discourses about public space in the cities of Lisbon and Bologna. Main research interests are in the areas of social science, with an emphasis on communication science, urban studies, and visual culture, and more specifically on the politics of visibility, representation, and access to urban space. So Anna, the floor is yours, and same questions and conclusions that we asked for the 3 former speakers. Thank you.
Thank you, Isabel. Hello, everyone. Thank you all for inviting me for all these sessions. It's curious to hear that resume of my project, because it makes a lot of sense when I look at the notes I wrote down about the presentations. So it's like, oh, that's right. That's me. That's my point of view. And it's interesting that we all have different points of view about the same presentations, and I think that's also what makes it rich to exchange all this information and all these points of view. I just prepared very small slides, but I'll just share my screen to, I don't know if this is on, no,
Yeah.
it's not on slideshow.
No, we're seeing it
Now it's
now.
on slide.
Yeah.
Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay. So I kind of organized my notes and created this very basic scheme. I don't want it to be something very encompassing and don't want it to work like a document that speaks about graffiti and street art in general. But these are the main ideas I gathered from all the presentations that we have seen in the last two sessions. And so I, again, I think the perspective that I tend to get more interested in is the perspective of the visibility and the access. And this is valid not only for who creates something in public space, but also about who is represented and who are the publics. So in general, the idea of what role these forms of expression play in the general public and in the communities as a whole. And so I divided this in 3 groups. And so for me, the first group that I would like to kind of resume would be the group of the creators. And in that I include all the creators / artists / writers, whether it's a graffiti writer or a muralist or a painter or any other artist that makes something in urban space. And I resume their motivations between these 3 general groups, whether it's artistic and they can pursue a career in art or not, political activism or disruption, and this is a little bit of what Yona maybe called artivism, and then the ego or name spreading or any type of gesture that is more usually related to urban contemporary subcultures like graffiti writing or urban explorers or whatever. So I don't consider these to be like mutually exclusive. You can be an artist that navigates all these universes. I would say that these are like the main motivations that take people outside to produce something and to make it in a wall in the public space instead of doing it in a studio, in a canvas, or in a or in paper. Then the audiences, I would say that in general, we can gather them in a group of people I called tourists, and they are not necessarily tourists in the classical sense of the word, but they can be tourists in their own city or in their own country, or even if they're traveling abroad, but they are in general people that move from one place to the other looking for certain things to see or to experience. And in this specific case, people who look to appreciate artworks in general, whether it's in a gallery, in a museum, in a tour. There's a lot of tours about street art. Lisbon is a very good example of that. I myself have been a tourist guide about graffiti and street art, and I can also share a bit of that experience with you later. And so in general, I would say these are like the tourists, so people who look for the artworks. Then I consider a different group to be the commuters or passers-by or inhabitants. So people that casually pass by a mural or a graffiti piece or something that's on their way to somewhere else. And then specialists, that would be other creators, curators, academics, and so on. So people who look at these things with a very particular eye, and they know what they're looking at. They're particularly interested in that object, and they are underlining certain aspects of it and thinking about it in a very critical way, and so on and so on. So again, these don't exclude mutually. I can be a local and a specialist according to the day of the week or whatever. I just think of this as the three main ways of taking contact with graffiti and street art. And then the other group of aspects that I gathered from the presentations were the group that I also work with, and it's related to public policies. And in public policies, I include a set of different stakeholders like museums, city councils, and all the official institutions that are more in Portugal, they are in general governmental institutions, but they can also be academic or from the art world. And the public policies, they have three main approaches to graffiti and street art. And I would say, for one side, they create, support, commission, or promote, curate, or sell. And in here, I'm including the selling of the city in a city branding process, or the selling of a given neighborhood in promoting certain buildings for affluent people, or promoting, for example, Lisbon has been in the decade between 2010 and 2020, a very particular case of city branding, where the idea of graffiti and street art was part of this very cool, youthful ethos that would probably attract digital nomads and young creatives, and this was used as a marketing strategy to sell the city as a destination, not only for tourists but also for people to come and live here. The other public policy, the other group of public policies I consider is the one where you can address conservation, documentation, and archiving. And in here, I would gather all the conservation aspects that we saw on the first day, with the more physical aspects of it, the chemicals and the thought about the materials and the materiality of the works, and then the addressing of the question of ephemerality and the digitalization, and how documenting and archiving can be also an issue, and how they can be addressed differently. And for example, in Lisbon, the city council also has a little bit of this role of documenting and archiving, basically taking pictures of everything that appears on the city. The archive is not particularly well organized. I think the photography archive is now working more into creating a more organized archive. I don't know how it's going. It's been a project that it's been taking years and years. I have no idea how it's going now. But for example, in Italy, I know that I have to see the link because I don't remember the name. Sorry. It's Urbano, and it's a project that was developed by the Comune di Modena. And it's another example of how you can create an archive and they also have a lot of interviews, not only in video, but also transcribed in text, in Italian and in English. And it's supposed to be a big repository of the history and the scene, the contemporary scene of graffiti and street art in all the Emilia-Romagna province. So this is another example of how public policies can deal with graffiti and street art, and in the question of access and visibility. And then the last one, it's the idea of removing, erasing, criminalizing, penalizing, and demonizing. And I say demonizing because public speech can sometimes say very negative things about graffiti, especially about graffiti, and sometimes about some political activism, or artivism, and they say such negative things that they become the public idea. And again, like Pedro was saying before, what is repeated regularly in public speech, in public space, ends up by being the common sense idea that the general public then adopts and replicates. And this is very obvious, for example, in our media, where we have a clear demarcation between what is considered art and what is considered crime or vandalism. And the public, they replicate this for them, it's very clear. Everything that is writing, everything that involves just calligraphic work, for them it's trash, it's noise, it's just erase it. And the public investment in the city of Lisbon to remove graffiti is some million euros every year, and it's sometimes it's very quick. Something appears and the day after it's not there anymore, and most of the times they are just painted over, which is something very curious, because you end up with just rectangles of different colors over pieces of graffiti. So this is kind of the general ideas that I gathered from the presentations, and I organize them like creators, audiences, and public policies, but I consider them to be interconnected, and I consider them to influence each other. We could say they participate in the same processes of public space creation, and I would say they co-create public space in different levels, in different moments, and this is dynamic and it's always changing. And it changes from city to city, and in each city it changes from time to time, because Lisbon today is not the same as it was 10 years ago. I wouldn't say I could compare Spain and Italy from the presentations we saw, but I would say that these aspects in here, I consider them more or less general from all the Western cities in general, at least bigger cities, and how the states, for example, criminalize graffiti. It's something that comes from the early stages of graffiti in the United States. So the idea that graffiti was classified as vandalism is something very old, and we kind of imported all of these ideas, like muralism is something that you have to spend more time doing. In general, you invite an artist, and this immediately creates some kind of respect in people. And so all these perceptions are very old, and I think they tend to still be very generic. And all the gentrification processes and the new muralism, I don't see radical differences, at least in Europe. I see this as very homogenic and very massified phenomenons, all connected also with mass tourism and the processes of homogenization of city centers, and again, of course, there are very specific aspects, but I would say they are probably easier to identify from city to city than from country to country, because usually the urban space is managed locally. There are national laws that can consider crimes or vandalism, this and that. But in terms of promotion or management, I would say that the differences are probably more local than national. But this is just my perception. And so I was saying that these creators, public policies, and audiences, they all influence each other, and they all co-create different levels of public space, and they are backed by speeches, by public speeches. And in here again, taking that idea that I mentioned before, that also Pedro mentioned, we can have dominant speeches behind all this. In the media, we also have the academic speech from which we are part, and we can have our say, and we can try to speak for the ones that are our side, our bubble. And we have the so-called cultural industries, we have public institutions, and we have all that is related to commercial transactions, whether it's specifically addressing art or any other thing, including the city branding strategies. And I was saying, like, the ones that are in academic context, like myself, we can speak to the outside. Like, for example, I was a guide and I made street art and graffiti tours for a while. Also because I needed the money, obviously, not because it was a dream of mine to be a tourist guide. But every tour I had, I always tried to have a role in educating my audience to be open. I didn't want to teach them, how do you say, labels. I just wanted them to be open and to question, because usually people come to see big murals and they don't give a damn about stickers or tags or whatever. So I always tried to make them pay more attention to all the details, to all the little things, and explain them a little bit in what sense were they produced, or more or less what could they mean in general, not particularly, obviously. But some people were actually super curious about it in the end, and they would say things like, oh, I don't look at tags the same way anymore. So I always tried to raise questions during the tours. So that was my very humble role in trying to speak for outside of the academic bubble. So to finish, I just want to end with a few questions, like as an academic, or even as someone who is interested in how these things work. I think these are questions that we need to bear in mind every time we discuss what is public art and what is it supposed to be, how is it supposed to function. And for me, these questions are like something I need to remind myself all the time when I'm looking at something or when I'm thinking about something. And they are like the main questions I carry with me along all my research work about public art, about art in public space. And they are these: that should it be subjected to commercial logics? And does it promote participation, emancipation? Does it create its own audiences? Does it allow political speech, public discussion, dissent? Is it truly democratic? Does it promote inclusion, or does it promote exclusion in the end? Like gentrification processes, for example, tends to exclude certain people from certain areas of the city. This is just one example. So these are the questions with which I finish my presentation. That's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anna. I think it could be great if you actually can write on the chat the questions that you were
oh, okay.
questioning yourself, because I think they can trigger more.
Sure. I will leave them there.
More conversation, yeah. Well, actually, I think you more or less answered in the last slide, but I don't know if you can confirm, in your opinion, if at the end of the day, capitalism is crossing the whole thing, because looking at your chart is that, okay, different audiences. Obviously, tourism, because they bring money, are privileged. Who is controlling the narrative? The media. So at the end of the day, I think maybe that is the problem that we researchers or the academia have.
Yes, but I think both academics and also artists can try to make a difference in like small steps, you know, like you can change your small, like I changed some people's minds about graffiti during tours. Some artists can promote different, like for example, the murals that Inward paints. I know they are not just inviting an artist to go there and paint something and just leave. It's part of a process that makes a big difference. I think if you have a critical approach of how these things can work, you can make them work better. But of course, capitalism will always try to just adopt everything, co-opt everything, and make it sellable somehow. So I would say just that there are different levels of how much you can let that happen or fight it. And I would say that you cannot fight it on a big scale. You can fight it on a local scale. But I don't know.
So maybe the academia should be a sort of mediator between, at the end of the day, between the media, the public.
It could be, you know, like for example, museums have educational services, and street art doesn't have that, or art in public space doesn't have that. And that work, I would say, is left for teachers and other people that have these educational concerns in trying to help people learn how to question things, which is the main idea, I would say. And then there's always the mass publics for mass culture, and that I think it will always be like that. So, but I say, for example, if you have public investment and you can apply public investment in a public project, I think it's way more interesting to have it a project that involves people and creates some process and promotes emancipation than just invite Shepherd Ferry to paint a huge wall in a neighborhood and then say the neighborhood is transformed. So these are different levels of approach, I'd say. But this is what I'm saying is very simplistic. So
no, but it's necessary we need to be reminded all the time about that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Question here.
Yeah, there was a question for Jonah that actually Jonah answered already, about the question of nature and how why not like displacing you know, our focus to other beings in nature. visible or invisible, and why not consider these natural organic interventions, etc. And Jonah was saying that there has been works and installations with plants, for example, creating music with plants vibrations. Interesting. Yeah, I guess if the problem is that something that it's supposed to be ephemeral stays too long so that to be erased and whitewashed, maybe the future is creating something that is going to be less lasting, but maybe more effective. I don't know. It's a general question. Okay, and then Jauma is saying, I thought about this kind of mediation between citizens, artists, institutions, but I'm not sure if academic organizations should have this mission. I don't know if anyone wants to answer. In the case of Madrid, I know there are different kind of mediators between street art and the public. And mediators can belong to the academic field and they can propose a critical perspective, or they can be very, or they can focus their tours, for example, more to satisfy the tourist needs of taking good pictures for the Instagram. So I don't know, Jauma, but if it's not us, who else?
Yeah, I think, for example, in Bologna, I saw that they have academics being part of the big team of people who manage public art. That's something, and that's something I don't see happening here, for example. So, but that has to be an initiative from the city council, for example, to invite academics into the team that thinks about urbanism.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
Yes, exactly. It's here, at least in Lisbon, who have the control of this process. It's the city council, and I think it's more natural for them to make this role of, let's say, the educational area of the museum, let's say, because they are already in their mission, they have already the relation with the citizens through the.
You know, they have a lot of. I interviewed them twice, and they have a lot of educational projects in their
Exactly.
books, in their websites, and then in the practical sense, none of that happens. So it's just it's just a little bit of blah blah to put on the website, and maybe to justify having a team of 19 people. But in the end, if you go and check what they're doing, they're not doing much. So they could, for example, they could work with schools or.
Yeah, that's the problem of some kinds of public administration. In the academic side, it's the same. I think there's also this complexity, but as like looking at the picture in blank, like not looking at Lisbon example or wherever, I think the city councils, the local administration, it's more suited for this mission of conveying a reading about the public space than the academia. The academics are a bit, I don't know, they are still in a very big struggle, I think, with their own ghosts and stuff. I think it's the relation of the academia with the public space. It's not direct. Only some academics have this relation. Very few, of course, our fields have, but it's not like it's obvious, at least. Yeah.
But how do you think we can make a difference, like Isabel was asking?
Yeah, I think it's in articulation with the public administration, and we need to pressure them to have academics with these teams that are on the ground. In a way, they perform correctly because they do things or by instinct or by personal interest, let's say, like to be more visible inside the hierarchy or whatever, you know. So if there's no fundament, like scientifically proven rigorous observation of what's going on and, you know, guidance to them, they will operate on these random logic and so on. So the public administration is the point of contact, the administrative point of contact with the local. But of course, we as researchers, we can do local, you know, ground-based work, and within this work we can, you know, make these processes, of course. But as a big structure and organization point of view, I think it's more the public administration.
I don't know if anyone else has any other comment. Jaume, I remember I spoke twice with these kind of city councils, and my advice was simple: don't do anything. Well, I think being independent also gives us a lot of power. I think. I don't know if anyone wants to offer the perspective from Naples, or because we have been I talked a little bit about Madrid, about Lisbon, you know, the relationship with the administrations.
I'm sorry, I will say something, but in case I would ask some help from Silvia, that of course she's a Napolitan and works in the sector for many years. I will say that from my personal point of view and from my experience with Inward, I think that many project, some project in the urban creativity has a different development based on the approach with institution. So the last year we reached, so Inward reached an important piece of puzzle for the recognition of the phenomenon, that was the conference with the pioneers of graffiti writing, street art, and new muralism. That was organized. This was a conference organized with Black Rat, Mono Carrasco, and sorry, Silvia, could you help me? I'm sorry, I'm sorry, okay, Cornbread. I'm sorry, I didn't have his name in mind. And so Inward organized this important event, and was maybe a starting point to had a real connection with institution, that finally the Ministry of Culture recognized the importance of the phenomenon at a researcher level. And so it was the first real times in which the institution dialogue and created a dialogue with the real creators of the phenomenon. And so in that case, based on the research level, it was important, but also other important and relevant objectives were reached always locally. So Inward based the first study center firstly in Rome and then in Naples. But again, there's still work to do to enlarge the phenomenon, the research of the phenomenon in the whole country, and this regarding also the research point, but regarding the producing point of view, even in this case there are very declinations, main declination of productions in relation to the approach with institutions, so it can be very differentiated. This is what I can say. I don't know if Silvia can add something, even writing something down. I don't know.
Okay. Well, I don't know if anyone else wants to, let me see if there is something else on the, yeah, Jaume is saying, of course, opinions and projects by academics have a great power to develop with sense and with the support of all, also respecting the multiple positions that exist in the street. I don't know if Jaume, if you are talking as someone who is an academic and also a writer. I don't know if you can clarify your position. Okay, I guess he's writing. I don't know. I have, if there are no more comments or questions, I would like just to have a to ask a general question. Well, it could be a writer or whatever, but my vision as a writer counts. Of course, it does. Okay. I was thinking of what Oscar Molina said about. I really like the image of the house in Sonora with these graffitis that immigrants had been doing and so on. And then thinking of the presentation of Jaume, like people writing almost just for themselves, or yeah, maybe other writers, but people who need to go on purpose to certain areas. And then thinking of the presentation of Jonah discussing nature and interventions in maybe more remote spaces. And I'm wondering whether, because of this oversaturation of murals and images and everything in cities, do you think, like everyone in the room, do you think is there a new trend by artists, by researchers, like new interest in expressions in public space that maybe are more raw and less elaborated, more raw? I don't know how to put them. And people who are trying to get out of the city game and everything that entails, like Instagram, walking tours, etc. What do you think about that? Anyone? No answers.
I think I'm probably too old to know about that, but probably younger people would be here, maybe they would know about something, because sometimes these things start underground and they take their time to emerge.
Mm-hmm.
And they start at 5 a.m. in a dark corner. I don't know.
So everything will be corrupted eventually.
I don't know.
Like for me as a researcher, what Oscar presented, that image of the writing inside the house, fascinated me. It's like I need to know more about that. And I don't know if it's the search for novelty. I don't know if it's simply that it's raw and it's something developed outside of the circuits. So I'm wondering if someone else here has this feeling or a different perspective.
I saw that image and I thought immediately about you, Isabel. Sorry, Oscar.
Okay. Oscar, sorry.
Okay, I think that our position as researchers, as academics, are different than producers. No, when I arrive in a place with our particular eye, we check things that other people is not interested. So in this sense, I want to take the question about what kind of participations academics we can to do in this phenomenon. I think that the first problem is who is the owner of the public space. At the end, the owner of the public space is the government in big cities, not in places and small places. What happened with the public art in big cities? Artists participate with the government, with the academics. At the end, they are corrupted or co-opted things, I think. For example, in my country, we have a lot of participation of graffiters or artists, but some artists don't want to participate because they say, if I participate with this movement, at the end, I corrupt my art. So in this sense, is our work as researchers is reflect about this phenomenon, I think. About the house on Sonora, it was interesting because I worked as a register of patrimonium, and I arrived in this place. People was interested in the house, but I was interested in the pictures. At the end, every people has interest, has a eye, and this is the interesting part of the researchers. No, we can do a new point of view of this phenomenon. No? I think.
Thank you, Oscar.
Yes.
Well, if there are no other comments or questions, and if the co-organizers agree, maybe we can wrap up here. We hope to have your conclusions written and published, even if it's not in a very thorough, like 15 pages article. But I think it's important that your conclusions, as well as the presentations by speakers, are written so that we don't forget them and we can go back to those ideas. So I guess you will be receiving an email by me soon. And I don't know if Silvia or Monica wanted to say anything else, or Jordi, but thank you, everyone. I think it was great. I leave with more questions than answers, and I guess that's good. So thank you very much, everyone.
Muchas gracias a todos. Oscar, Jonah, Pedro. Y bueno, todos los que os habéis quedado hasta aquí, hasta el final, y los que os habéis tenido que ir también. Y bueno, espero que sean unos intercambios, un interscambi molto interessanti, molto appropriate. Io penso che è sempre interessante parlare sullo spazio pubblico perché è una cosa viva, una cosa sempre in costruzione, una cosa che ci sono dei conflitti necessari che sono aperti, no? Come diceva Jaume, no? A diverse considerazioni, soprattutto a sguardi diversi, interdisciplinari, no? Penso che sempre questo è molto interessante di non cadere nell'endogamia, no? E poter aprire un po' questo sguardo e non parlare di verità, non parlare di cose stanche, no? Sino contrario, no? Delle cose in trasformazione, perché noi ci trasformiamo, lo spazio pubblico cambia, la natura cambia e tutto sta cambiando, no? L'intelligenza artificiale, tutti questi altri modi di parlare, di interventi, della sfera pubblica, no? Di questo altro spazio pubblico online che è ovviamente collegato sempre con quello che succede a livello presenziale, che non dobbiamo dimenticare, no? La parte presenziale, la parte di essere lì, di toccare, di sperimentare, perché sennò tutto diventa molto per lo schermo, no? Ma non è un lamento, è una è un modo di concludere d'un modo costruttivo. Grazie a tutti, davvero.
Grazie. I would also to thank you again, both participants from the audience, the general audience, both the expert, international expert, and always the previous expert of the previous meetings. And I, at the end of the first meeting, I exchanged some WhatsApp with Isabel, just thinking about how beautiful it is to see something like this developing, just starting from a confrontation in another country, in occasion of another conference. So I think that emerged today and in the previous meetings many points to discuss in the future. And as I said before, really is just a frame to propose a different perspectives, Italian, Spanish, but a really different perspectives on the phenomenon of urban creativity. Also analyzing real concrete study cases in both countries. I think that we have the instruments to say to go further and to deepen the topic also in the future. That's it. So thank you again.
Okay, thank you everyone.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Ciao.
Bye.
Gracias.